We have seen over the last almost 3-4 years now, as we all know, that Pakistan was put in the grey list in 2018. The last meeting was held in October, and now the current meeting is going on. But interestingly, there is a different point of view. It seems that Pakistan might remain in the grey list for some more time. Though Pakistan has done whatever was in the given capacity, I would say even beyond their capacity, still there are issues that the FATF wants Pakistan to look into, one. And secondly, as far as the money laundering or terror financing is concerned, I think Pakistan has done a brilliant job. No other country has done that much, even those who are in the white list. Now, looking at this, it seems that it has become more of a political problem, more of a political issue, rather than measuring it on the basis of merit. Now, before I introduce you to our panelists and we talk about it, our production team has prepared a report. Let's watch that first.
Financial Action Task Force Working Group and plenary meetings, which will review the progress made by the countries on its grey and blacklist, have started their sessions on 21st February 2022. The Foreign Office spokesman Asim Iftikhar on 18th February 2022 said that Pakistan had fully complied with the conditions laid down by the Financial Action Task Force for exiting its grey list. He added that all the technical requirements of the FATF are completed by Pakistan and hoped that the outcome will be in positive direction. He also suggested that only political considerations of the members of illicit financing watchdog can hold Pakistan in the grey list. The politicization of FATF remained prevalent, as despite Pakistan having completed almost all the requirements, Financial Action Task Force retained Pakistan on grey list in 2021. In this regard, Financial Action Task Force dishonored Pakistan's sacrifices to eradicate the terrorism through anti-terrorist operations, including Operation Zarb-e-Azb and Operation Radul Fasad, in which Pakistan bared monetary as well as life losses. Moreover, the Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's statement that Narendra Modi's government had ensured that Pakistan remained on the grey list of the FATF also shows the prevalent politicization of the watchdog.
Now, you heard what was said in the report. Now, Asim Iftikhar, as we all know, the spokesperson of the Foreign Office, has said that we have fully complied. If we have, then what's the problem? To talk about that, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Ali Salman Saab. Ali is the Executive Director of Prime Institute. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. And we have with us Faheem Sardar Saab. Again, he's doing an introduction. He's a Senior Policy Specialist, SPPC. Thank you so much, sir. And on phone, we'll be talking to Qazi Yasir Irshad Saab, who is the Economist, Researcher at the Royal Holloway University of London. We'll be talking to him about the ongoing FATF issue as well. But let me start off from you, Ali Salman Saab. I think 99.99% has been done. Whatever we have done is something which is unparalleled. I would say beyond the capacity of Pakistan, and we all know how the government institutions, whether you talk about the State Bank of Pakistan or the Ministry of Finance or the law enforcement agencies, the intelligence agencies, or any other financial institute for that matter. So the way they have done this crackdown, they've picked up people, they have set policies, they have made sure that those policies should be implemented in its true spirit. But still, sir, that fear of being in the grey list. Now, that is something which I fail to understand why.
Well, historically, first of all, I think we need to understand that there are two major pillars of FATF as a watchdog. So, first of all, it started as an anti-money laundering watchdog, right? So, back in 1988 or 89, and it has continued to, eradicate the practices of transfer of illicit money across the country, which has been highlighted by the Prime Minister several times. But also since 2008, the counter-terror finance was added into this list, and around that time, Pakistan also came on the radar of FATF. And I think, historically, Pakistan has been, compliant with many of the requirements, particularly, I would say, when it comes to money laundering aspect of the FATF. For instance, if you look at the regulations which were imposed through changes at SECP, central bank, more documentation as customer, as businessmen. Now we have to comply with much more regulation. Even our National Savings Directorate, the laws were changed. Essentially making sure that the money laundering aspect is minimized. And I would also think that say that the counter-terror finance has been also adequately addressed. But according to the report, which Pakistan also submitted to the same task force, we have about 60 proscribed organizations in Pakistan and about 7,000 designated terrorists, according to the report submitted mutually by the Pakistan and their task force. It's a huge number to be concerned, and I believe that government of Pakistan has done and has taken several measures to actually not only to reduce this but also to control this. But this is an ongoing struggle, which I hope that it can be recovered in the future.
So this seems to be more of a political issue rather than these sort of demands that were put on Pakistan by the FATF, and I think the compliance level is very high. And they have always appreciated the effort of Pakistan, but at the end of the day, it seems that there is some sort of an international pressure on this group, and the wrongdoings and the wrong information, unfortunately spread by the Indian media in particular. Because you just write FATF Pakistan, and you will see the top 10 stories are from the Indians, and in which they will malign Pakistan, and most of them, I mean, those stories, they are not even true. So unfortunately, this is what it is all about, isn't it?
Well, I think India loves Pakistan so much it can't live without Pakistan. So the bottom line is that FATF is, if you look at it technically as a when it comes to its technical requirements, Pakistan has done very well in a very short span of time. I mean, Pakistan has basically beefed up its system, cleaned things up, made it more compliant, made it more transparent. And I mean, adding to the list that Ali Saab was just sharing, even our prize bonds have been, well, basically they've been shut down. If they're going to be launched again, they're going to be launched with a lack of anonymity. So at the end of the day, when we look at the technicalities of FATF, I think Pakistan has come through in flying colors, and we already have, according to some estimates, some tend to argue about the numbers, but we are more compliant than many countries on the so-called white list. So when you say that FATF is perhaps political as well, I mean, you can't help but say yes, because I mean, what else is required? Now there's a term that FATF used in at the end of the last plenary, where they categorically said that Pakistan has shown commitment to the framework, and it has demonstrated that it accepts the framework. So at the end of the day, I mean, what more is required? But there's always a do more thing. You have to do more. You have to accept more. They even, I think, they even want to ensure that our legal proceedings regarding supposed alleged terror financing or prescribed persons, that they want to observe that as well. So I mean, that's like going it's not a broad-based system anymore. It's pretty deep. It's a very deep oversight of what's happening in Pakistan. Having said that, in the same breath, I mean, it's my duty to say that there are many countries on earth who are in the so-called white list, who, according to the same standard, fall short. Because why do they fall short? Because perhaps the point has not been agitated at the moment, but they are technically not there, and they do have people who could be prescribed offenders. So coming back to where we started from, Pakistan has done very well on the technical front. Pakistan is now really in control of the framework, so to speak. Now, as I said once in one of our...
productive 4 years, yeah, since 2018.
Very productive.
Yeah, but another, you mentioned about the prize bonds. I mean, that is news for me, very interesting one. But if you look at India for that matter, sir, and I'll just give you one example. The kind of money the Indians have, it's unbelievable. Sometimes I get to hear that Mr. Adani is the richest man in Asia now. Mr. Ambani is number 2. Nobody talks about their features and from where they're making money and all. IPL is just one example. We all know what IPL stands for and what exactly is going on, but nobody ever talked about it on the international media. Nobody confronted India. Secondly, sir, when we talk about, for example, I was earlier having a word with you that, for example, if somebody wants to give ₹1 million for the sake of constructing a mosque in a village, nobody can stop.
Sure.
That concept of collecting chanda still exists because that is a part of our culture and perhaps part of the religion also in a way. But that was also something which came under a lot of scrutiny, if you remember. That, okay, well, no more chanda collection, no more Ahwan Jihad, good enough. But sir, at the end of the day, it seems that the international players are not fair with Pakistan.
Well, I would like to submit, Faisal, that when you were giving examples from Indian, large-scale enterprises, obviously we know that they also have built some, large-scale world-class businesses. And so let's not mix up the two sort of, the cash flows. But yes, there could be other problems within India itself, which we don't have to deny it. But my focus is like how can we, put our own house in order. So if you look back in last, let's say 12 or 14 years of FATF compliance or lack of compliance in Pakistan, we have largely 3 time periods. So first time period we were in a grey list. Then there were like 3 years when actually Pakistan was out of grey list and it was put in white list. So that was around 2015 and 18. And then on 18 onwards it was again put back on the grey list. I think we need to go back and see what the government of Pakistan as an institution was doing right and what it needs to do now in terms of reaffirmation of some of the commitments.
Do you think, sir, we have done much more than what we did in 2015?
As I said, I think on the money laundering aspect, as far as the regulatory compliance is concerned, Pakistan has done much more. I do not disagree with that. Right? So, but my perception is that perhaps we need to do more in affirming our commitment to eradicate sources of terror financing from the country.
We used to hear about that do more mantra from the Americans, where it was more about the Afghan issue. Very fruitful and beneficial for Pakistan also. Now, one area, sir, where we initially had a problem, if you remember, there were a 20-point agenda given by the military also. If you remember, after this very unfortunate incident of Army Public School in Peshawar, then we got to know that even now the breaking news was about the military operation in Balochistan where the insurgents were killed, 10 of these terrorists. I think the kind of effort Pakistan is putting in, it's unparalleled, it's unbelievable. Don't you think, sir, it's also very important? I mean, not to show this as far as FATF is concerned that this is what we've done on papers, but practically show them that the not date 23rd of February 2022, this is what Pakistan did. These many soldiers we lost, these many terrorists were killed. And this is what we found from them. And it links directly with the Indian RAW or XYZ agency for that matter. Do you think, sir, marketing your case, because no matter how weak your case is or how strong your case is, the advocate plays the major role, sir?
True. Presentation is extremely important whenever you are putting forward a case. I mean, whether it's about terrorism or whether it's about your economy rising or whether you're trying to simply promote your country's tourism. The point is that what you just said right now is about evidence and links. Pakistan has been doing that, and Pakistan has sharpened up its presentation on that. But these things take time, and we have to be fair. Let's give ourselves a break as well, because when we are trying to convince the world, you're not trying to convince 1 or 2 countries. You are perhaps trying to convince approximately 30 to 70 countries. So these things take time because many countries, realistically speaking, don't know what's going on. They just see prima facie what's happening. They see what's there on the media and what, let's say, the more loud outlets of international media are talking about. At the end of the day, we have to underscore 2-3 things. The government of Pakistan has, on war footing basis, initially reacted to the FATF framework. I'm going very fast chronologically, and then started to adjust. Now we're in a position where we understand the system, and still we're not that proficient, let's be fair, but we are quite familiar with the system. Having said that, there are other countries that are perhaps a little bit more familiar, and they're part of the system. So that's where the sort of difference lies, in my eyes at least. And when we talk about what things that we've done, that's wonderful. But now the new uncharted territory perhaps is the diplomatic offensive.
Absolutely.
Where we have to go and talk to countries, get the votes, and we get off this list once.
So you need 3 countries to support you to be in the grey list, and you need 10 or 11?
13.
13.
Yeah.
13 to get out of the grey list. So then why can't we muster that kind of a support? What's the problem? Saudi Arabia has always been supportive, so is Turkey, so is China. These are the 3 countries, perhaps, or maybe 1 or 2 more.
Malaysia also.
Malaysia was primary.
Malaysia also, yeah.
But since the Indian influence is increasing, and that is a reality, I mean, we should not, take it lightly. Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, along with the Americans. Now, it is because this is what the Americans say, that they have a strategic relationship with India, and for sure containment of China, looking after the Russian affairs. Don't you think, sir, that if Pakistan is looked upon as a country that has shifted the bloc, though the Prime Minister claims and says we will not and we have not, but still, sir, the growing relationship between Pakistan and China, and the recent visit of the Prime Minister to Russia, during these circumstances where the entire globe is really, pointing their fingers towards Russians for the, as far as the safety of Europe is concerned, now things would get from bad to worse. What do you think?
It's always going to be a challenge, because every country on earth, especially the ones that impact things more, they are asserting themselves, and we don't need to even we need not look very far. Every country, Russia, France, America, England, everyone.
The French are so close to the Indians. So the cases with the Americans. So the cases with the British. I mean, all these influential members or the countries, I mean, they have their say, and
we have to bring in here
right?
a very simple thing about economics, which is, what does India buy? India buys a lot of things from the UN Security Council members, and that tends to create a market. Right now, for example, I mean, what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening, with Russia's views, I want to very categorically say, I think that's not even our problem. We should not make it our problem. We have other things to worry about. Of course, we need to balance ourselves internationally, which is something we've been trying to do for a very long time. We have to also understand that the countries that we're trying to balance with, their environments have changed, drastically. So the situation tends to be very fluid. Having said that, coming back to where we started from, if Pakistan is to sort of get this FATF point completely under control, we have to now start engaging more on the diplomatic front, because you technically
foreign policy
you
management.
don't need to be a technical expert to be on the white list. You need to be well known. You need to be out there. You need to convince those countries regarding what is right, what we have done, what FATF is wrong about. So convincing the FATF to perhaps you're wrong on 2-3 points, that requires a lot of homework. I'm repeating myself. Over the past 4 or 5 years, we have actually increased our potency in the ability to deal with. First it was to understand, then it was to engage, then it's to deal. Now the time has come, and I said this before on one of your previous programs, now the time has come for us to stay in this terrain, not to decide to do something else. We have to stay in this terrain, and we have to now start changing the system, which every country is trying to do. Every country is going to assert themselves. We have to do the same. Wherever we can. It is just simply not possible to have everyone on your side. It's international politics. It's international geopolitics, however you want to classify it. The bottom line is we have to look at our interests and where we can push the hardest to get the maximum impact.
Coming to you, Ali Salman Saab, so since we get to hear this very often, that from geopolitics to geoeconomics. Now this is the philosophy, this is the kind of, this is what we will follow. It's a long way. Obviously, it takes time. It cannot be done overnight. You think, sir, if this could have been the case, let's say 10 years ago, if we would have thought on those lines, let's say 2012 or 2013 when Zardari stopped of charge or Pakistan People's Party came into power, things would have been different, sir.
Well, I think with this launch of new narrative, as we hear from the new security policy, national security policy, we often hear about the change in the narrative, and the policy is also out, and I have had the occasion of studying it. I mean, the commitment is laudable. The commitment that Pakistan needs to realign its policies, which includes foreign policy, which we were talking about, which includes security policy, defense policies.
I think foreign policy is the most important component.
Aligned with the economic interests, right? So once we'll have to we have to let sink this reality. We have to internalize this commitment that okay, where is our economic interest as a nation, as a society, and then realign our foreign policy accordingly. So and learning from our own mistakes. I mean, nation states have made mistakes, but they've also reformed themselves. If we go back to the 20th century, there have been world wars, but then the nation states changed its course, focused on economic development. The nations have built huge security apparatus, right? But then they corrected the course that okay, we need to maintain a balance and maybe give more focus on the economic security or economic welfare of the people. There are countless examples of countries like that. Why can't we take those examples like Germany, Japan, who were destroyed, but then they changed and refocused. I think in that respect, national security policy is a good start. But I would urge that we need to look also this debate about FATF in the same stance, that we need to reassure that we are committed to even our own policy and realignment of our policies.
But then looking at the action on 27 items, and then a few more were added, 34, 30 of which had been complied with by October. Then this is October, November, December, January and February, almost 4 or 5 months. And a lot has been done. I mean, if you look at the statement and the perspective in which it was issued by the Foreign Office, it seemed that yes, there is some hope. But so when you go through a lot of articles, I would say, written by the neutral observers, I would say, they believe that Pakistan is still going to remain in the grey list. My question now is, sir, how long can you stay in the grey list? I mean, is it forever? I mean, you keep on doing whatever you require, but something comes up and then you're told to do it. Well, don't you think it is going to be more beneficial for FATF as well as Pakistan to put Pakistan into the white list and then keep a check on what has been done or what not has been done?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a permanent status, definitely. We are not destined to be
4 years now
in the grey.
Like Iran and Korea, they are in the blacklist.
Yeah,
you never know that Iran ends up sorting some sort of a deal regarding JCPOA, and they could be in the grey list for some time. And
Iran is a different matter altogether, and also North Korea, obviously, because Iran is non-cooperative, right? Unlike Pakistan, because Pakistan is cooperative, complying, changing in rules and regulations. Iran is simply refused to engage, so it's in the blacklist. It's a different matter. Pakistan, along with Philippines and Yemen, are 3 countries, if I'm not wrong, are in the grey list. Maybe there are others, and they have their own reasons to be in that list.
But do we actually fall into that kind of a category? We do not. We do not. Yeah, but this is the external perception. This is the sort of the report card which we are handled. I mean, we can fight it, and we need to fight it. We need to fight our case better. But this is like in international obligations which we are faced with. Now, another important point, sir. The question is for both of you. Now, we all know that the narratives, the international narratives, war on terror, it was set by the Western world, Americans, or for that matter, anything. Narratives are always created and set by them, sir, and then applied on the other countries. Now, in the case of Russian issues, sir, the Prime Minister is there, is going to hold some very important meetings. But if Pakistan is regarded as a country which is in this block, let's suppose, because the Westerners are looking at it from that perspective. So do you think, sir, then everything is going to be very difficult for us, because the West perhaps is very powerful. They would put sanctions on you. I've never heard Chinese putting sanctions on some country, on Taiwan for that matter, or the Russians putting sanctions on Georgia or any other country for that, matter. Over here, sir, the Americans, they always do. Now they are talking about more sanctions, harder sanctions, the Western world supported by the Britishers and so many other European countries. That becomes the story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if this was the best time, to be honest, to visit Moscow. Maybe we should have calculated the time better. But maybe this time can be also leveraged. This visit can be also leveraged to improve our international presence. I hope that can be an opportunity. But look, I mean, as Faheem was rightly saying, that this is international politics. We can't avoid that. There have been, of course, times when the world was divided into different camps. There were cold wars, and then we moved ahead. We moved, we have passed.
What is it? There's an Asian bloc and there is a Western bloc. Clear?
It's quite mixed now. Actually, look at the fact that, for instance, many countries within Asia, look at Japan, right? So Japan has been historically linked, aligned with the West. It's
Korea.
Trade link.
Yeah.
Korea, trade and investment link with the US. So it's not a neat distinction between, let's say, Asia and the West in that sense. Yes, maybe within Asia there are countries which are more aligned with
pro-West
and possibly yes. I think the countries which have focused more on economic development, we may perceive them to be aligned with the West, and maybe the countries which have focused more inward, they are in that categorization. For instance, North Korea comes to my mind, can be anti-West.
So your take?
My take, I mean, I think there are three camps now, not even two. So I mean, and those camps are all changing. I mean, not as fluidly as one can easily say, but no, it's not that fluid. But one thing is very clear, is that you have the post World War II US-Russia camps, then now you have a China camp.
Yeah.
Because it's all based on economics and military power, and that basically transcends into political power when you sort of interweave the two. So I mean, if you for me, it's a very interesting analysis. You just have to look at the UN Security Council structure and the decisions they take. I mean, that pretty much sums up the world economics and world politics in a very clear black and white manner. What I would suggest is that we have to look at it from a slightly different angle. What does that mean? We cannot just look at it in a binary form. It's not binary anymore.
Explain that.
Okay, for example, things were mutually exclusive when you had two camps. Now you've got three, and in those three camps, you've got countries on both sides. For example,
India,
yeah.
Pakistan even.
India trades heavily with China, but it buys very expensive lethal weapons from America and Russia. So I'm really trying to, if you start looking at it from a binary modular perspective, which is a very academic and useless way of looking at things. I mean, you can't be binary in everything. If I'm being binary, it's not going to help me. I have to look at it, well, what's the tilt? What is the tilt? I mean, every country has realized, even I think the big countries have realized, do not depend on one or two other nations. You have to depend on everyone, and yet you have to depend on...
That is what the actual essence of your foreign policy is all about.
Yeah, you have to diversify your exposure and your support and your outreach and your economics
and your exports and your imports.
Exactly. So I do not think that I don't think that there are two camps. I think there's three camps at the moment. We'll see.
But so this Sino-Russian love affair, is that the right approach?
No, I would sort of disagree with that, because I mean, just because they were communists does not mean that they were the same thing. They had very different views.
Post 2014, post the Crimea issue, the trade between these two countries, Russia and China, it has multiplied by 120%.
Certainly, and that makes perfect sense, because economics is the new diplomat, and that's that diplomat has access to every room, every office, every government center.
Very nicely
So
said.
economics is the key, and I just want to conclude my points on the fact that economic diplomacy is the key.
So I remember the Hungarian foreign minister was in Pakistan. I had to interview him. So when I interviewed him, I mean, I gave me his card. It wasn't written that he's the foreign minister. Economic diplomacy. Interesting. So last quick comment. The blame game between Pakistan and USA regarding Afghanistan, because for all what happened, the way they had to exit, the way they ran away, let me be very frank, they have blamed Pakistan for their loss after 20 years. Do you think this is going to be another bone of contention?
Well, historically, Pakistan and US had been partners in most of the last 40 years, right? In this Afghanistan affair.
I mean, even they're non-NATO allies.
Absolutely, and so,
Frontline.
but now it seems that the interests of both countries have started to diverge, and we'll have to pay a price for the policy shift. There are always trade-off in the policy.
I think that is very important, sir. Your take on the same point?
I think that we basically, Pakistan is charting new territory for itself. We're creating a new way forward. I know that sounds very gray and broad, and truth is that's what it is.
All right.
And I think we just have to be more precise about what we want, and then we take things forward.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, Ali Salman Saab.